Do people not understand that, like, you aren't giving someone power by letting their actions affect your emotions? You are releasing the tension in your body that was built up from your reaction. Oh my god.
So here's my predictions for the next 10 years. You guys can come back to this video anytime, call me out, do what you need to do, okay? Like, I'm holding myself fully accountable for this. Humans are going to genetically modify mushrooms to produce meat-like texture in labs, and it will be regulated and sold worldwide. Unfortunately, I'm also seeing in the future there is going to be a new form of a parasite in freshwater fish. This will dramatically decrease the amount of farmed fish being sold in markets today. Very random, but there's going to be a special kind of tax for mangoes imported into the United States. If you have a mango tree or you are growing mangoes or there's already a fully grown mango tree on your property, protect that. You will start making a lot of money. You can start selling mangoes on the side. Anybody who has produce that they are growing on their farms or on their land, it's going to be worth a lot of money. Jasmine rice being imported into the United States will also cost a lot of money as well. Also, in the next 10 years, if you are growing, like I said previously, if you're growing fruits and vegetables on your land or on your residential property somewhere, it is going to drive up the cost of your house big time. So I'm talking about if you've got squash, if you got potatoes, if you've got carrots, if you got all those plants and they are producing fruits and vegetables, you're going to get a lot of money for your house. There is going to be a dramatic decrease in the amount of teachers, professors in the educational field. And this is going to be so bad that we are going to be fully online with teaching. These school districts do not want to pay more money to teachers for them to have a livable salary. So instead, they're just going to cut everyone out and just go fully online. This is going to be the gateway they introduce AI into teaching students because it's cheaper. All they got to do is run a program and let it go. And it's going to teach children from here on out. In the code that they are writing for these AIs, it's going to be dangerous because they're going to ban certain topics from being taught. You see what's going on in Florida with the critical race theory. This is going to be one of those things. Kids in the future are not going to respect AI and they are not going to like AI. So chances are there's going to be a lot of children who are not going to want to go to school in the next 10, 15 years. This goes for everybody in the United States. In the next 10 to 15 years, there's going to be a mass awakening. A lot of people are going to be leaving the United States. This is going to be the biggest generation, Gen Z. I talked about this before months ago. It's going to be the biggest generation in history to move between continents. This is also good news because as everyone is moving around, there's going to be new visa programs available for people who want to give back to the community in exchange for a permanent residence.
How do our brains remember that we forgot something, but can't remember what we forgot? Oh my graciousness. Somebody get me the government. Somebody get me the government. Somebody get me the government. 911, what's your emergency? Somebody get me the government. Somebody get me the government. Somebody.
Hi baby, here are 5 lies we've all been told. You have to forgive everyone that hurt you if you want to heal. You get to decide if someone's behavior is unforgivable, and if you choose not to forgive, you can still heal. Everything happens for a reason. Aside from it sounding flippant, you don't have to find a reason for everything. Sometimes really terrible things happen, which no one deserves. If they wanted to, they would. This phrase is used as a way to simplify human behavior, which is by nature extremely complex. Everyone is different, and sometimes even if they wanted to, they still couldn't or wouldn't. You have to love yourself completely first before entering into a relationship. A lot of healing happens in relationships, so let's not shame people for not loving themselves enough. Avoid low vibe emotions. There is nothing inherently shameful about anger, sadness, jealousy, etc. They're all necessary at times and can provide us with helpful information.
A spiritual ego is when you awaken and you make spirituality your entire personality. Because you're holding on to personality. Just be free. Be who you are. There's no limits. There's no rules.
I wish I would have known. When you speaking some shit into existence, you got to be specific as fuck. Because I've always said I wanted my life to be a movie. Growing up, I've always said that, but I never said which genre. And now this motherfucker looking like a psychological thriller. Let me out or change the fucking plot. One of the two.
My sister sent me a tweet and it was basically like, healing is not meant to be done in isolation. You haven't healed, you just haven't been triggered. That triggered me. It's like, you telling me I'm in this bitch to get away from them niggas, but I gotta go out there in order to heal? Like it ain't in philosophy, but hell no. Hell no.
Stop consistently making choices that align with a life that you don't want. A little bit of a tough big sister today. I woke up this morning at 5:20 a.m. I'm gonna go walk and then I'm gonna go to workout class. Do you think every single day I wake up like, I can't wait? No, I make that choice no matter what because I don't want the old life I used to have. I want this version of me. I want to be that best version of me, and that's what she does every single day. Start choosing to show up for yourself and start choosing to believe that you can do it because you can. Don't have to be extreme, you just have to be consistent.
Do you know about disinterested contemplation? Let's talk about it. Food tastes different when you're hungry. If you're really hungry, you ravenously eat a thing and you might not get time to like fully in a sophisticated intellectual erudite way like appreciate the nuances of the flavor. But on the flip side, you might also like enjoy it more because you're hungry and it's more satisfying. The philosopher Immanuel Kant, who you probably have heard of, in his book on aesthetics, talks about disinterested contemplation. The only way to really know whether or not an apple tastes good, according to Kant, is to eat one when you're not hungry, and then like really pay attention to the flavors and shit. When I was younger, I was really on board with this way of thinking because I lived in a world where objectivity reigned supreme, subjectivity. We've been talking about this for like the last 6 videos. I guess I shouldn't gloss over it. In the last videos, we've been talking about how often the people who are claiming that you need a more objective perspective are in fact just trying to hide the fact that they live in a subjective, privileged position of perception. And so they're saying, oh, be more objective. Don't bring your emotions into this. They're just saying, I don't want to listen to your pain, which is a dereliction of epistemic duty if there ever was one. But back to the apple. On this channel, we've been talking a lot about the book Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and it's taught me a lot of things, but one of the things that it taught me is that we exist in ecosystems. We don't survive alone as a species. We survive in a relational way. We survive together. So while Kant might say that if you are too hungry, you don't properly taste the apple, we can reframe that in thinking of it in terms of ecosystem. Because part of why fruit exists in the first place is to be tasty to hungry creatures. So perhaps from a relational perspective, from an ecosystem perspective, instead of a disinterested objective perspective, someone who's hungry tastes the apple better. And the application of this is more important than you might think. One of the repeated choruses during the Black Lives Matter movement was that for some reason or another, people were protesting wrong. They were too emotional, they were too this, they were too that, there were not enough this, not enough that. A lot of these critiques of these protesters took the form of saying, you are too emotional. My friend and colleague Laura Danger talks about this a lot in regard to gender relationships, because often men criticize women as being too emotional. Where Kant says, if you're too hungry, you can't taste the apple, men say, if you're too emotional, you must be wrong about the thing that you're criticizing me for. In case it's not clear, this is incorrect. Just like the sweetness of the apple is evolved in relationship to a hungry person, anger is not something that degrades an argument when lives are on the line. It's part of what anger is for. And we shouldn't contemplate other people's anger with disinterested objectivity, but empathy instead.
Do you want to know why I always tell you guys to read? Because not only does it transform your mind, your vocabulary, your thinking skills, your reading and writing skills, but it also presents you with differing thought processes, differing opinions. And when you read a book, not everything in the book is necessarily going to resonate, and you might not agree with every single thing in the book. What reading the book does is you've invested already
time, effort, and energy, and you genuinely probably really like the book. So what do? You continue reading, even though you're like, I don't know if this is really landing. I don't know if this principle or this point that they're making is really landing with me. And I think I feel differently. What it shows you in that moment and what the skill that you develop by continuing to read is a skill where you are able to listen to the other person. You're now able to try and understand where that person is coming from. And even if you can't understand, you are open to listening. When you get online, you really see everyone loves you when your opinion is popular. Everybody loves you when they agree with your opinion. Everybody thinks that you're so smart when they agree with you. The second that you say something or you voice an opinion that someone does not agree with, you have become the worst person on earth to this person. And it just goes to show how small-minded so many people are.
Have y'all ever thought about how crazy it is that genuine first experiences don't exist anymore? And because of the way the internet's set up, they'll probably never come back. Like, think of a major first, like the first time you ever get freaky with someone, right? You've consumed thousands of hours of shows, movies, and porn at this point, right? So you have an image of what it's supposed to look like. So it's almost like in the moment, you have this checklist, like this, and this needs to happen in order for it to go well. So it's almost like you can't be present because you're forced into like this director role where you're trying to make your first moments line up with these images you have in your head of how it's supposed to go. And it's crazy because it's almost like we can't experience first anymore because our first were experienced through other people's eyes. I don't know. That was kind of weird. I don't know if that made sense. But like we're losing the purity that comes from just not knowing things, right? Like I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what it's supposed to look like, but I'm just excited to do it with you. It doesn't exist because so much information is being forced into our heads. Like side note, it'd be single mothers having their first kids and they feel like, oh, this is what it was supposed to look like. How do you know what it's supposed to look like? We're not supposed to know what our firsts look like. Does that make sense? It's like you just created life. That's a miracle. But it applies to everything, like weddings. You know, people have consumed so many hundreds of thousands of hours of wedding content that by the time they have their wedding, it has to go a specific way or it's a failure. You know what I'm saying? We're being like primed for disappointment. Like if your husband starts stuttering horribly on his vows, that ruined the wedding. Or if the weather's bad, that ruined the wedding because we can't be present in the moment without trying to direct it. Or you travel to like a major city, it almost feels weird because you feel like you've been there before, right? You're bending around corners, you know what to expect around the corner. You know what Times Square looks like. You know, you've never been there, but you've experienced these firsts through other people's firsts. If that makes sense, I don't know. I'm kind of dragging it, but it's just really crazy to me.
Watch this while you pee or poop. I know that we have free will, right? I get that. But actually testing the limits of said free will is a completely different concept. And something that I've been trying to do in my life is test those limits more. So, for example, the other day, I was at Newport and I was just walking around. I was about to go on a run, and so I was just walking around the little town, and I noticed that there was a gym, right? There's this gym right there. And I'm like, I haven't had a chance to get my workout in. And so I saw that there was no one at the counter, and I was like, I wonder if I can just walk in. And I could. I just walked in and I had my workout and I got a free workout in at this random gym and no one said anything. And there's been so many of those moments where I just realized nothing really matters. You can get away with a lot of stuff. Like this one time I ended up backstage at a show because I simply just walked there by accident. And all that was separating the backstage from the public was a curtain. And I just took the curtain and went boop. And walked in thinking that's where the bathroom was. And this other time I was at LAX and I was about to go on my flight, but there was this long ass line to actually check in your bags. And I was like, oh my God, if I wait in this line, I'm going to be late. But then I saw there was a line next to it that was for group only. So like 10 people or more, right? Large groups at a time. And it was empty, completely empty. And this other one, 30-minute wait. And so I'm with friends, I'm with two friends and I'm like, wait, be right back. And so I go up to the man that's working the counter and I'm like, hey, I'm really running late for my flight. Can you let me in? Like, can I just use this line, please? He's like, no, this is for groups. And most people would have stopped there, right? But I was like, are you sure? Like, please, are you sure I can't just use it? He's like, all right, go get your bags. And so I go get my bags and I come back. I'm like, thank you. He's like, yeah, just don't do it again. I'm like, yeah, of course. And so I skipped like this long line just because I asked twice after being told no. So, moral of the story, ask for things and do things and test the limits of things legally. And you never know what happens.
Oh, you're being over dramatic. You're being over dramatic. Maybe you're being under dramatic. Kyle, cause a fucking scene, dude. Let yourself be known.
If you are someone who has been through some serious shit in life, then you're probably really good at zooming out, having a bigger perspective on things, not thinking in so black and white, holding contradictions, having compassion for people who are typically marginalized and judged. Because I feel like when you suffer, the only way out of it is to find the wisdom and the meaning and learning through it. And I hate when people are like, oh, you're so smart, I got to this point because I have suffered my whole life. I had to ask myself really hard questions from a young age. And I feel like people criticize me too for being too serious and like, oh, you need to lighten up a little, have some friends who have fun. Fun was not an option for me for a lot of my life. I never had the permission to not be this serious person. So yeah, it's very difficult for me to just enjoy life or have lighthearted conversations with people. In some ways it feels unsafe and it feels wrong. But like, why is that such a bad thing? It's not a bad thing, but I will say that it's hard to find people to connect with. Because when you're forced to see big perspectives, people don't like that. In general, I feel like people get very uncomfortable when I start talking about compassion and nuances in life. People don't like that shit. People like to categorize and label, put things into boxes, limiting things. I feel like a lot of the spiritual community is like, oh, when you're enlightened, you don't want to hang out with people anymore. You got to cut off these friends. But like, I don't see it that way. I don't. But I feel like as this person that I am, I find it very lonely by nature. Like, I don't have to cut people off to see that I'm alone in this mindset or this. I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal here. I'm not like I'm an awakened person and nobody can keep up with me, but like, I feel very alone with my thoughts and my perspectives and wondering if people are really understanding what I'm talking about. And it's part of the reason I love this app and I stay on here is because it connects me to people who think in the same ways that I do. Like, I need that so badly. I'm craving it desperately. Tonight, I've had some odd interactions with friends recently, and please let me know if you can relate and let's talk.
Just a daily reminder that it's not physically possible to earn $1 billion and that humans are really bad at understanding the difference between a million and a billion. 1 million seconds is about 11.5 days. 1 billion seconds is 31.5 years, which means that 2 billion seconds is about 63 years, but 2 million seconds is like 3 weeks. 3 million seconds is about a month. 3 billion seconds is about a century. Billionaires shouldn't exist.